So just to set this up in context, we're not going to dwell on this aspect in this particular clip, but just so we understand what she's talking about at certain points, this is from Max at the Gray Zone and Anya. A month before Charlie Kirk's killing, billionaire pro-Israel moneyman Bill Ackman arranged an intervention in the Hamptons, during which sources say he and others hammered Kirk for the conservative leader's growing criticism of Israeli influence in Washington. Kirk came away fretting about Israeli blackmail, sources say, as he contemplated a Catholic conversion. Now, the reason for this contemplated Catholic conversion is because this strain of Christian evangelicalism that he was involved in embraces Israel as a cornerstone of the faith. The fact that he was thinking about converting to Catholicism, many are speculating, was in part because of his shifting views of Israel and not wanting to be Mike Huckabee on the issue, beholden to those powers. So Netanyahu, this was, I think, possibly the first interview he did, or definitely among the first, where he started waving around the letter that Charlie wrote to him not long before his death. Let's take a look at that.
Prime Minister, you have your own memories of Charlie Kirk. Please share them.
Well, Harris, before I do that, I have to say that we're just heartbroken. Myself, my wife, my family, my son, actually, on his 2019 visit to Israel, had lunch with him and his wife, Erica. We're shattered first as human beings because a great human being has been taken from us. Was an extraordinary friend. He said, he wrote me a letter on May 2nd this year. He said, one of my greatest joys as a Christian is advocating for Israel and forming alliances to defend Judeo-Christian civilization. A few weeks before the tragedy yesterday, I called him and I spoke to him and I said, please come to Israel. I invited him to Israel. And sadly, that visit will not take place. But he was a defender of our common Judeo-Christian civilization. He was unbelievably excited to walk in the footsteps of Jesus here. He valued our bond, the bond between America and Israel. He did so many things to defend free speech. He had his truth. He stood up for it. But he said, you can come and debate me. He invited that debate. He certainly didn't invite the violence, the horrible violence that tried to silence him. And this is a worldwide problem. The people on the extremes, the Islamists, the radical Islamists, and their union with the ultra progressives, they often speak about human rights. They speak about free speech, but they use violence to try to take down their enemies. Whether it's President Trump, who's been almost assassinated twice, or they try to kill me here too. But they got Charlie Kirk, and it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Okay, so Candace played this video, and this was her response to it.
Who is they, BB? Who is they who got Charlie Kirk? We don't have to actually speak conspiracies. I'm just wondering, because you said a lot there, but it really sounded like it was about BB trying to establish a narrative that we saw reinforced by a lot of people, that, Charlie kind of made it almost sound like he died for Israel. I mean, Trump's account even tweeted out a photo of Charlie and an American flag and also an Israeli flag, a bit of AI used, like this is just who Charlie was. He says Judeo-Christian values. He spoke to him 2 weeks ago. Again, you would think he was busy fighting this 97,000 front war, but no, he's letting you know that he just randomly picks up the phone and calls Charlie Kirk and invites him to Israel. Why would BB do that? It seems like maybe there's a little more to the story. No, there definitely is a little bit more to the story. First and foremost, that letter he is holding up, he is severely misrepresenting. Those sentences are real, but I am calling upon Bibi Netanyahu, the dear friend to Charlie Kirk, to publish the letter's entire contents. Like, don't start with just 2 sentences. Publish the entire thing. You're holding it. I'm saying you're severely misrepresenting the contents, that in May, Charlie was concerned about Israel and their influence on American politics and how they were pushing things that he felt were in conflict with his beliefs, free speech here in America. Bibi's holding it up like Charlie just in May said, hey, you know what? I just want to write a love letter to Israel. That's how it was presented. Would you guys agree? That's not how it happened. Now, when I started asking very sensible questions about Israel, as someone who had dedicated her political life to supporting Israel, many times alongside Charlie Kirk, I was met with the very same pressure. And just like Charlie was being invited to Israel, I was invited somewhere else. And when this arrived to me, it felt like a threat. You know, I got to tell you that. It felt like a threat, like not like, hey, come here and we can educate you because you're my friend. More like, this is your last chance. That's how it felt to me. I can't speak to how it felt to Charlie. And I know that Charlie was offered a ton of money in this moment, a ton of money. Bibi would fund it, you know, spend tons of money. And Turning Point, I guess, if it needed to go to a higher level, would have gone to an even higher level than it already was at. And I know for a fact that Charlie denied that funding, that Charlie denied, and what Bibi didn't include there, he declined to go to Israel for, I would describe this as like, you know, re-education camp. You know, we've seen it. You made an uh-oh, but we can help you. You know, we just need you to come out to Auschwitz and take a picture. Yeah. We just need you to come to the Holocaust Museum and take a photo. We just need you to go to Israel and we can make this better. Charlie said no to Bibi.
All right. So what is she talking about? Well, we have a very prominent example from not too long ago. You remember this? Remember this? This is November 2023. With anti-Semitic tweet, Elon Musk reveals his actual truth. And so what happened over at X? X ad boycott gathers pace amid anti-Semitism storm. Firms including Apple, Disney, and IBM have paused advertising on X amid a anti-Semitism storm on the site. It comes after X owner Elon Musk amplified an anti-Semitic trope on the platform, formerly known as Twitter. The boycott has also been picking up steam in the wake of an investigation by a U.S. group which flagged ads appearing next to pro-Nazi posts on X. Mr. Musk has denied his post was anti-Semitic and has threatened to sue over the advertising investigation. Okay. Now, you know, we're not going to litigate here whether his post was anti-Semitic, but I do remember, I think it might have been Schellenberger, I'm not positive. Someone did an investigation on how they got these ads placed next to these posts. And you would have had to just keep clicking and clicking and clicking hundreds of times to get that outcome. So this is the kind of thing they were doing. Now, nonetheless, if you've observed Elon Musk in the public space for a while, does this really seem like a guy who would be intimidated by advertisers pulling out? This is the I'll fuck you in the face guy, right? Elon Musk loves to be defiant. If you come at him that way, what have we seen with Elon Musk? This is a guy who calls Thai divers, heroic Thai divers, fans of the playground for refusing his stupid submarine idea.
Well, didn't he tell Iger, go fuck yourself or something like that? Yeah.
He went up on stage. I think that was the New York Times Deal Book Summit, which is this big gathering of ultra wealthy elites. The Larry Finks all get up there on stage. And yeah, this was right in the middle of the night. He told Iger to go fuck himself. And nonetheless, who knows? You know, maybe it's a threat. I don't think it's a threat of money that made him do this, but it was a threat of something. Elon Musk visits the Auschwitz campsite and we'll speak about online Semitism. Whatever you think of Elon Musk, man, going to her point of the pressure exerted, do you think that Elon Musk had a change of heart? Do you think that Elon Musk wanted to do that? And do you think Elon Musk is the kind of guy who, without perhaps a threat to his life, would agree to do that? Like, do you think a threat to his advertising revenue on this thing that he bought basically to control the narrative and to have political influence, just like oligarchs have bought money-losing media outlets since the dawn of media without expecting to make profit there, but to use it to profit their real businesses? Like, does it really make sense that he was so scared of Disney and IBM that he would go and do this, what looks like, I'm sorry, a humiliation ritual? You don't believe me? Take a look. They made him put on the kippah. The whole thing, man. The whole nine. Look who's next to him. Who's that next to him?
Ah, et Shapiro.
Alors, si Elon Musk s'est rendu sur le site du camp d'Auschwitz, c'est aussi pour évoquer ce problème de l'antisémitisme.
Look, man, they got him to do the whole thing. And, you know, funny enough, Ben Shapiro interviewed Charlie Kirk on September 9th. You watch those eyebrows. They're hard to miss.
We've pushed back against the media on COVID, on lockdowns, on Ukraine, on the border, so like maybe we should also ask a question. Is the media totally presenting the truth when it comes to Israel? Just a question, you know, that maybe we shouldn't believe everything the media says.
There go the eyebrows.
I know I've been conditioned to ask a lot more critical questions over the last couple of years. So, Ben, some people would accuse Israel of wanting to ethnically cleanse. Some people in the Israeli government are saying, again, it's all over the place, right? You have opinions all over. In your opinion, what would a good outcome 5 years from now be, and how does one respond to the claims of ethnic cleansing?
Ben didn't like the sound of that. Written all over his face. He does not like the sound of that. So she goes on. We're going to cover Bill Ackman specifically in another segment. But she goes on here a little bit about Seth Dillon specifically.
I decided another person that was there, and I am not surprised this person was there. If you've been listening to my show, Seth Dillon, I was going to talk to Seth Dillon, and I decided to message him last night about this.
Just for anyone who doesn't know, Gray Zone covered this a little bit. Dillon is the CEO of Babylon Bee, the conservative answer to the liberal Onion satire outlet. Dillon and his crew have derisively mocked famine-stricken Palestinians and their supporters in the West since Israel's slash and burn campaign began in the besieged Gaza Strip. An evangelical Christian with Jewish heritage, he has claimed, quote, "I did not cease having Ashkenazi blood when I put my faith in Jesus Christ." Also a Jew. Dillon did not answer calls from the Gray Zone.
Hamptons meeting. And Seth Dillon, who is normally very quick with a response, has not yet been able to respond. I'll show you this text message chain. And I want to be clear, I am not someone who normally publicizes text messages. But my friend was shot in the neck. And I'm just not really in the state right now to be polite when it comes to the answers that I am demanding, okay? This is me out to Seth Dillon last night. I sent him Bill Ackman's tweet because, you know, he tweeted, "I feel incredibly privileged to have spent a day and shared a meal with Charlie Kirk this summer. He was a giant of a man." I said, "Any comment on this one, Seth?" He didn't answer last night. This morning I said, "Need a comment ASAP, please." He didn't answer. Then I followed that up and I said, "Trying again here, you were present when Ackman lost his mind on Charlie and when Bibi invited him to Israel and Charlie refused." Text messages immediately following this meeting are circulating. I find Ackman's statement, as though the meeting was somehow cordial, to be incredibly disturbing. Are you at all disturbed by that tweet? Do you feel, as I do, that this tweet significantly betrays the defined purpose and mood of his, and I presume your, final meeting with Charlie Kirk? ? He was unable to speak to me, but he did place some frantic calls to Turning Point USA. Yeah. You see, I went out to Seth, but I also went out to 2 other people who were at this meeting, and nobody is willing to go on record. They're all messaging each other, trying to figure out a coordinated response to say that, no, this was all quite cordial, but no one wants to go on record and describe it as cordial because they know someone's leaking, because someone's got a guilty conscience about what happened at the Hamptons.
So Ian Carroll here says, yesterday was a turning point for Israel-U.S. relations. Less than 24 hours, and the internet already figured out who the most likely culprit was. He was their friend. He basically dedicated his life to them, and they murdered him in front of his family. Israel just shot themselves, Seth Dillon dutifully responds. This post is a turning point for your soul. Get on your knees and beg God for forgiveness for your hatred of Israel and the Jewish people and your depraved desire to scapegoat them for every act of evil. Listen. I hung out at Rescue the Republic, at Rage Against the War Machine. I hung out with Ian Carroll. He didn't spit on me once. There were 6 Hasids trying to spit on him, but he was quick. It was very Matrix. He was dodging the spit like those Matrix bullets.
Dave Rubin's entourage, they were all over.
They made what's his name? Beanie Boy.
Oh, Tim Pool, yeah.
They made Tim Pool spit at him. It was like a hazing ritual.
Yeah.
Dave Rubin and Tim Pool really were there. I got pictures of that. They were like backstage there, cavorting. All right, so who is this guy? And this is, when you dig into this story, it's interesting because you can really see how these Zionists have used kind of anti-wokeness and culture war to insinuate themselves into all of these institutions that conservatives are connected to and consume. So here, this is from Sam Parker. Seth Dillon and Babylon Bee, part of an Israeli influence operation. Here, Dillon appears in a PragerU promotional video with known Israeli intelligence operative Marissa Straight. Straight served in the elite IDF unit 8200 and has sworn an oath of loyalty to Israel. As a friend to Straight and a Zionist Jew himself, Dillon knows and understands these details. What is he up to? And here's the PragerU. They're not hiding it. This is their bio of her. Marissa Straight, CEO of PragerU and host of Real Talk. She was born in Los Angeles and moved to Israel at a young age, where she completed her primary education and served in Military Intelligence Unit 8200 of the Israel Defense Forces. See, now when you look at this, you could really see how the Israelis understood that the people who would go along with genociding Arabs would be right-wing white nationalists. So I'm not saying that's what all conservatives are, but all right-wing nationalists, white nationalists, are conservatives. So they've built up institutions like PragerU under the guise of we're saving your culture, when really the underlying intention has nothing to do with that. It's really about getting you to connect Israel to your personal causes and grievances. That's why you see Babylon Bee as the alternative to the Onion. Well, what? You think there's no Israel money going to this rabid Zionist who set up the Babylon Bee? A lot of these things that you think are anti-woke institutions, and that's what I saw when I went to the dissident dialogues and saw what the conversation was. That was at the height of the Columbia protests, and they hardly wanted to talk about it at this dissident dialogue free speech forum fighting back against speech codes and wokeness. You know, Lee Fong was an honest actor. He said something about it. I got a little interview with Schellenberger where he said something about it. But they ripped Breonna Joy Gray to pieces on stage, and that crowd was rabidly hated her guts representing the pro-Palestinian point of view. Why? Because they got conditioned to connect these things in their mind, to support the Zionist agenda and connect it to their personal cultural grievances. That's the purpose of these institutions. So here's Max talking a little bit on Rift TV about Dylan.
Exposed as fake. Like, what has the Babylon Bee been doing for the last 10, 14 months? They've been mocking Palestinians for starving, mocking anyone who supports them. Like, that's supposed to be humor. And now you show up at a meeting with a cutout in private, a cutout for Netanyahu, who's screaming in Charlie Kirk's face. And then Charlie Kirk gets shot a month later. And someone asks you about the meeting and you don't have the courage to even speak about what took place there, and you don't feel ashamed of what happened there, and you don't feel ashamed that you might have been in the pocket of this malign entity that is trying to manipulate the US government on behalf of a foreign power because you're part of their propaganda network and you're being exposed as fake. The mask is coming off right now. Everyone can see it. And this was something that Charlie Kirk was confronted with during the Groyper Wars, where they were accusing him of that. And they were saying, look, why won't you talk about the USS Liberty? Why won't you talk about the major gulf or rift between US interests and Israeli interests? Because you pretend like they're one and the same. And he would shut it down. And then he realized, I can't shut this down anymore. I can't do it. I actually have to listen to my own base. I have to listen to the youth. I can't just manipulate them. They're not falling for it anymore. So this problem will persist, along with just the general problem of trust. Nobody trusts the official story about this assassination. And I am totally willing to believe that Tyler Robinson, look, everyone knows who I am. I'm not someone, I'm basically coming out of the left here, and he could have some left-wing views. If that is confirmed through a real investigation and we see proof of that, then fine. He could just be some gamer, a lone wolf. We suddenly have this trend of these lone wolf young men who are recently radicalized who climb onto roofs with sniper rifles to take out their targets. I mean, what's going on with that? But the public doesn't trust the official story. So many mishaps, contradictions. Now you have a missing, what is it? You have a missing manifesto that they retrieved forensically through their aggressive interview posture, according to Kash Patel. So the public doesn't believe it, so the public is going to form its own theories. And at the same time, having communicated with people in the administration, they're not getting the full story. They're wondering why the FBI isn't talking to them. They want to know where they can locate the muzzle flash from the sniper that shot Charlie Kirk, supposedly on the rooftop, and we haven't gotten the video of that. So even many people are in the dark there. And as the theories abound, they are going to go to the forces that were threatening Charlie Kirk in his final days. And I can do nothing about that.
Okay. So, yes, what you're really seeing is this, whether it was Israel, was not Israel, there's certainly cause to think that they might have been involved. They certainly had a motive to do it. But this is exposing a lot of people. At the very least, I think we could say that Charlie Kirk in his final days was being pressured by people like Seth Dillon, by people like Bill Ackman. They're lying about it now, and they're terrified of being exposed because, for one, their fortunes depend on not being exposed, particularly in the case of Seth Dillon and his media company. And they're also very ideologically motivated, and it's all coming apart, as many of us predicted it eventually would. It was never as natural a marriage as they wanted to think it was, to align themselves with right-wing conservatives this way, because one of the strongest strains in that movement is isolationism. You were not forever going to get them not to notice that there's this foreign country that makes everybody put on a kippah and fuck that wall. That was not gonna fly forever, and this seems to be people like Benny in the closet who just dutifully parrot administration talking points want to spin this as this is the breaking point. We're going to come for the leftists because the Zionists desperately want to spin it that way. Really, if you look at how this is playing out, including, as we'll see, how much viewership Candace's video got last night, this is the dam breaking on people noticing. You are not going to be able to shut down this conversation. If anything, it's unstoppable now. You could feel how much momentum is behind this conversation at this point. Do you want to say something before I go to the final point?
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing is like, look, whether Israel did it or not, what this whole chapter really exposes is that support for Israel in this country is like 95% manufactured. It's not organic.
It's not real.
Like,
right.
It's not real. If they're having to sit this guy down in the Hamptons and scream at him to get him in line, Charlie Kirk, a guy who, like I said, my assumption is raised as a devout Christian. He's probably absorbed a lot of that Christian Zionism. He probably took a lot of this for granted as, something I'm just supposed to do as a conservative Christian boy. When he starts straying a little bit, you got to browbeat him in that way, whether you had anything to do with this crime or not. What this exposes is that, support for Israel is not organic, right? It is manufactured. It is concocted. And that's something they don't want out there. But like you said, and like Max said, it's all getting out there. And Candace Owens is doing her part. I think Tucker is doing his part. And, I used to get on these guys a lot more. Ian Carroll, yeah. I mean, Ian Carroll doesn't give the caveat, hey, I love Israel, my friend. And I used to give Tucker a lot more shit for saying every 5 sentences, I love Israel. For being honest, now I kind of understand why.
Have you ever had matzo brei?
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Now I kind of understand why he might feel a need to say that every now and then, given these current events, I'll say.
Or why Elon went to Auschwitz. It never made sense to me, honestly, money-wise. Like he's never been one to bow for that reason to that type of pressure.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So one last bit of this I want to take a look at. Netanyahu, of course, in one of his interviews with Greta Van Susteren, invoked blood libel and the Holocaust.
I believe that this was a prelude to a greater and greater massacre, culminating with the worst massacre of them all, the Holocaust.
Well, he's mentioned the Holocaust. Guess we can't prod the narrative any further, guys. Holocaust. So everybody's just stopped talking about anything. Hey, he's the victim. It's absurd. It's just absurd. The Holocaust happened. You heard him. We're sick of this shit. We really are. And there will be no narrative that I will not prod when it comes to figuring out why people are lying about the state that Charlie was in when it came to the topic of Israel.
Yeah, and this is a point that many of us have been trying to make to American Jews and Jews in the so-called diaspora. Israel is not protecting you. If you are afraid of a Holocaust, you should disconnect yourself from the Zionist project immediately. Immediately. Within 2 years, they took the invocation of this atrocity that really no one would question. Very few. It was completely fringe. As soon as you said Holocaust, yeah, man, like that was a card that would shut down most people. You destroyed that. At this point, people, if anything, you start saying Holocaust, immediately they're going to start rolling their eyes. That is what the Israelis did. They have taken this from being this sacrosanct thing that nobody would really question to turning it into something that, if anything, you get into the point, as you could see very clearly with Candace, they get angry. And with good reason, because of the way it's used. But our friend Norm says it better than I can.
And then there's all of this schlock nonsense, which basically is used to defend Israel and deflect criticism of Israeli policy. You can usually tell this literature because it asserts or insists on the absolute uniqueness of the Nazi Holocaust, the claim that no people in the history of humanity have ever suffered the way Jews suffered. And that's clearly an ideological claim. You can't intellectually prove things like that, and it's almost absurd to want to prove them. The purpose is fairly straightforward. That is, if people have uniquely suffered, then they can't be held to conventional moral and legal standards. So, for example, if you say that Israel tortures Palestinian detainees, well, then you're told, remember the Holocaust. Or if you're told that Israel illegally demolishes the homes of Palestinians, you're told, remember the Holocaust. The point being that because Jews suffered uniquely, it somehow excuses these, by any other standard, crimes.
Now, Norm saw through all this way ahead of a mainstream conversation around that at the time that he first wrote his book about how the Holocaust had become a grift and an industry and a deflection. That was really, really out there. And
just so everyone knows, his parents were in the Holocaust.
His parents were in the Warsaw Uprising. At that time, he destroyed really his academic career by taking that position. I mean, now, honestly, and it's really, you want to see a demonstration of how much the Israelis have lit the goodwill that was left from people's feelings of empathy about the Holocaust, how much they have lit that on fire. That you listen to that now, it sounds pretty mainstream now. At the time that he said that, that was a very big deal. That was not at all in the mainstream of the conversation, but he was right. Norm was right. And now that's become so transparent because people are seeing every day the Israeli state commit massacres and atrocities and genocide. And whenever you call them out on it, Holocaust, blood libel, Middle Ages, it's the same exact litany of things. And that contradiction forced people to question the entire premise. For people who are Jewish, who identify as Jews in terms of their religion or their culture, who are not Israeli, you want to preserve Judaism, you want to preserve Jewish culture, distance yourself from Zionism at the top of your lungs and make it clear that that was a crazy idea that was fringe until after the Holocaust. Most Jews did not support it. The Reform Temple, which is a branch of Judaism, they didn't recognize Israel until the 90s. Most people did not think it was a good idea. Some people say, and we do know, that early Zionists did work with the Nazis to get Jews to Israel. Now, some people will say they empowered the Nazis because they wanted to motivate Jews to go there. I think the truth is, we know they worked with them. I don't think they were behind it, but did they see this as a good thing for their cause? Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, they made coins with the Nazis. That's reality. That was the Havara Agreement, I think it was called. In the end, they took full advantage of the horror of the Holocaust and the feeling of Jews that they had no choice but to go to the homeland. But that's what it took for Jews en masse to decide that this was a good idea. The Jews were an urbanized, mostly European people. This sounded like a crackpot scheme. We're going to go live in the desert. Like this idea that Zionists have sold people that this piece of land and Judaism are inseparable is ridiculous. Do Buddhists feel like they have to go back to the birthplace of the Buddha? They have to go to where Buddha taught? in order to be Buddhist. It's absurd. If you're that's a very Bronze Age religion kind of concept. That's going back to Mesopotamia. This idea that your religion is connected to the gods of that land, of the land that those gods come from. Cities had their own gods, their own statue of that god. It's a very primitive concept. If you really have a fully developed theology, you don't need to be in a particular place to practice that theology. And most Jews recognize that until after the Holocaust. And now the Israeli state has grown so monstrous in its efforts to steal that land that the Holocaust, it's not working anymore. I don't think even Candace Owens 2 years ago, even a year ago, would have said what she said there.
Well, not only wouldn't she have said what she said there, she was pro-Israel 2 years ago. Yeah. I mean, Charlie Kirk was pro-Israel 2 years ago. Tucker Carlson, these people were all, you had all these people. You had all these people in your pocket, and you blew it because these crimes are just so obvious. So it's as simple as that. Yes.
Please clap.